My favorite part of this Volkswagen idbuzz is the ability to fit 10-foot long PVC conduit in this car. I also like that the area behind the front seats is also completely flat with the second and third rows folded down, and it measures slightly more than 8 feet long and just at 4 feet wide. So if you have other 4x8 construction materials, this can act as a proper transport for the nearest hardware store. There's not a lot of vehicles out there that can do that aside from minivans, but unlike minivans, this thing will actually turn some heads. Maybe some of it is because it's new and there's not a lot of it on the roads yet, but chances are it's because it has an odd looking shape that we haven't seen in many decades. Now, this 2025 Volkswagen idbuzz first edition is finally here for the United States market. And I think the last time Volkswagen sold something that looked like this in the US was 1979 with the Volkswagen bus. This time, the Volkswagen bus design has drastically transformed. It is much more aerodynamic, and there's a lot of technology features inside, safety features as well, and other transportation regulations and requirements kind of shaped it to what it is today. As for the design, the Volkswagen logo is still prominently displayed up front, though it's not as big. The headlights are no longer circular. Instead, it is this Volkswagen ID.4-esque design. And then the first edition comes with the two-tone paint standard. This one is called Cabana Blue and Candy White. I would hate to ruin this front grille with a license plate. There's really not a lot going on up here except for the adaptive driving assistance systems, some proximity sensors for your parking assistance, and also the cooling for your batteries. And the front of the idbuzz looks like something that'll maybe put a smile on your face. The side of the idbuzz is as plain as it gets for automotive design. You basically take the design of a city bus and shrink it down to family size. What you'll notice inside and out is that there's a lot of visibility with the Buzz, starting with this wraparound glass look and then also the panoramic fixed glass electrochromic roof inside. More on that when we sit inside. For the wheels, we have a 20-inch first edition design, so the center section is finished in silver, whereas non-first editions are black. This whole vehicle is a nice throwback to the original Volkswagen bus, but I really like the way they designed these wheels because it really completes the vintage look. There is one other benefit to this design, and that these wheels are also very aerodynamic, and that's something that you'd want for an EV. And here's where you see another EV design characteristics. The wheels have been stretched out to the far corners of the car. Now, you don't see a lot of overhangs unlike the original Volkswagen bus. And in between the wheels is a 91 kilowatt hour battery, and that's gross. So usable is only 86 kilowatt hours, and that should get you a range of 234 miles under best case scenarios. And since this doesn't have an internal combustion engine, the old intake vents that you're used to with the original rear engine Volkswagen bus is now some automotive garnish, and with the first edition, you could see the first edition badging right there. The front section does open, and this is how you access the windshield washer fluid and also the coolant. At the back, the Volkswagen idbuzz is almost all door, and since there's no internal combustion engine at the rear, almost all of this space is usable as storage. And that is the beauty of this rectangular design. Geometrically, it is the optimal shape for packing in stuff. Shipping boxes and containers are rectangular. Now throw that rectangular box in a wind tunnel and shape it for optimal aerodynamics, and I imagine you'd arrive at this general shape. So let me know what you think of this design. Personally, I think the Volkswagen idbuzz is now the best looking minivan out there. Inside, the Volkswagen idbuzz experience is generally good, with just a dash of disappointment, but it's mostly good. You do get the sense that you're driving a minibus, even though you have a pretty long dash here. You know that the edge of the window is pretty much the edge of the front tire, and the very front of the car is not much further than that. So basically, you have pretty good visibility of what's in front of you, and when it comes to maneuvering this around town, the Buzz is pretty easy to place despite the long wheelbase. The front seats are captain's chairs, so your armrest is independent of the center console. And the center console is super interesting because there's storage compartment at the front. There's also a storage compartment at the rear that slides out, and this whole thing can actually be lifted out and just removed altogether. And if you look at the partitions here, this thing doubles as an ice scraper and also a bottle opener. The front row is completely open, and if you need cup holders, you can just fold this out, and then there's slightly more storage up there. And to the right of the steering wheel, we have a couple of USB-C ports, and there's also a wireless charger in this model. To the left, there's a key holder, I presume. There's more storage above the glove box, on the door cards, and I love this armrest here. This is such a comfortable level to place your hands while you're driving. As for the technology, you get this 12.9-inch touchscreen that has built-in wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. And I love how they've included this ledge here so that you can comfortably place your fingers. And I also like the design here where you could rest your fingers on top of the screen and also do the same thing. What I don't like is that everything is touch sensitive, just like in the other Volkswagens. So if you want to change the volume, you have to slide these things. And if you want to turn it off quickly, you just tap on this power button on the left-hand side. Same like the climate controls. If you want to change the temperature, it's all about just sliding or tapping, and it's kind of annoying, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly. The same goes for the steering wheel. All of these are touch features. They're like a haptic feedback, so there's some slight vibrations when you graze over some of the buttons. The other slight annoying part is that there's only 2 window switches here, even though there's 4 openable windows in the car. So if you want to open the rear windows, you have to first click on the rear button and then use the switches. In front of the screen, we have a smaller digital driver display. It's not a big fancy screen, but it shows you all of the critical elements, which is nice. And what I also like here is that the gear shifter has been moved to the steering column, so this really opens up all of the space over here. And as for the screen, this thing does tilt and telescope with the steering wheel so that you have optimal angle with it at all times. And if you look up top, we have a fixed glass panoramic roof, and this is not just any regular glass. This is an electrochromic glass so that you could quickly change it between somewhat transparent to not as transparent. Now with the second row, the Volkswagen idbuzz is starting to be more bus-like because there's a lot of legroom in this car. And just like other minivans, you could just press this button to close the sliding door, and there's just so much room in here. And I'm 5'8", and there's 42.4 inches of rear headroom. And as for the features, you have heated outboard seats, you have some climate control features up here, venting, you get the Harman Kardon sound system, a USB-C port, though I can't say that there's a lot of cup holders in this car aside from the compartments on the door. I also love the flat floor in the second row, so if you have bicycles that you want to store in here, you could do so very easily. Now getting into the third row is pretty easy too. You just flip up on this handle, and then there's just a lot of room to step inside. The vehicle's with 3 rows. Sometimes the third row is just an afterthought, but not in this case, because even with the second row moved all the way back and tilted all the way rearward, there's still a lot of space for the person sitting in the third row. You also get some vents, some cup holders, and also a USB-C port. And as a bonus, there's a cup holder on the left-hand side of the vehicle, but not the right-hand side, presumably because there's some electrical equipment there. And here is where the charging port is, and here you find the CCS charging port configuration. You've got the J1772 plug and also the DC fast charging pins. And if you look at this port, you see that there's some cutouts here. I'm guessing that's so that water can drain out of it when water collects in there. So that's a pretty smart design. Now to get into the back, it is a powered rear door. And behind the third row, when it's folded up like this, you get 18.6 cubic feet of storage space. This comes with a floor that you could open, and it also comes with these 2 storage bins. Seems like this whole thing is removable. The third row is removable as well. If you fold this down, this thing folds flat, and you get 75.5 cubic feet of space behind the second row. If you fold the second row down, and you have a monstrous 145.5 cubic feet of space. And again, the very best part of this vehicle is how utilitarian this thing can be. It can be a hardware store hauler or camper van or just a people hauler. As for the driving experience, it's just like other EVs, very appliance-like. There's no vibration and harshness from the lack of internal combustion engine. It's all very quiet and smooth. Acceleration is decent, 0 to 60 in the 6 to 7 second range, but this only has a single motor driving the rear wheels, making 282 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque. If you get the 4Motion model, the all-wheel drive system, the figures go up to 335 horsepower and 512 pound-feet of torque, with 0 to 60 times under 6 seconds. As for the handling, it's not too bad either with most of the weight beneath your feet. The car feels pretty stable on back roads, the steering feels communicative, and the ride quality is decently smooth. For everyday driving, the idbuzz feels great. Range-wise, best case scenario, you'll get up to 234 miles. Anything below 250 miles, in my opinion, is a bit short. But if you fast charge this thing, it can go from 10 to 80% in under 30 minutes, according to Volkswagen. So that performance is at least average, but not as fast as some of the Korean EVs on sale right now. And no, don't worry about the sliding door ever hitting that charging door. In summary, I think the Volkswagen idbuzz is a really neat vehicle because it has the minivan utility, but it comes in a much more attractive and interesting looking package. The technology is pretty well equipped, albeit all of the touch sensitive features can be frustrating at times, but I think once you get used to it, you'll know some of the quirks. And then I also love all of the interior features and all the cubby storage that can be found inside the car. This would be my go-to utilitarian vehicle. This is better than some pickup trucks. This is better than some SUVs, but it's still somewhat of a pricey vehicle because before any sort of incentives and after delivery, this thing dials in at over $67,000. And that's for an EV that gets you only 234 miles. So I want to know your thoughts about the resurrection of the Volkswagen bus in the idbuzz form. I want to thank you so much for watching all the way up to this point. My name is Hanson, and that has been the 2025 Volkswagen idbuzz First Edition, and I'll see you in the next one.